The other day I was making a sponsored video. My sponsor this month wanted lifestyle content, which I took to mean that they wanted a video of me walking around going about my day. In the middle of the video, I would work in a mention of the sponsor and their offer, and later I'd upload the whole thing to YouTube. 40 days after that, I would cash my big, fat influencer paycheck. Except as soon as I started filming, I had doubts. At 6:57 a.m., as I clinked a couple of ice cubes into my glass, I thought, if I add cream to this iced coffee, people are going to lecture me about cholesterol in the comments. Half an hour later, standing in front of the butcher at the municipal market, I thought, what kind of meat is on brand? Does this entrecôte express my unique values and personality? In other words, I was barely out of bed, but I was already performing for an audience. Eventually, I made the video, but there was something inauthentic about it. I'm not used to turning my life into sponsored content of that sort, and I felt a bit strange about the whole thing. Hey everybody, it's Daniel. Welcome back to Spain to Go, the best podcast in the entire multiverse for all things Spain. This is episode 117. It's all about performing for the algorithm. I've got a shout out today for Ed. Ed Diaz says, I love your irreverence. Keep up the great work. Thank you very much, Ed, for your donation to the podcast and the blog and the project generally. I had to look up the word irreverence. I don't think I knew exactly what it meant. Actually, the specific definition is pretty interesting, and this is why I look things up. Irreverence is a lack of respect for people or things that are generally taken seriously. That does indeed describe a lot of what I do here. This episode will have a good amount of irreverence as well. So thank you very much, Ed. You can donate. Go to expatmadrid.com/donate. You can donate anything from €3 on up to however much you want to. Every bit helps. I appreciate it. I'm just a guy doing this in his free time. So expatmadrid.com/donate if you enjoy this podcast or the expatmadrid.com blog, please send some money my way. Let's talk about performing for the algorithm. Social media generally has become a venue for identity performance. Perhaps you value compassion, but you find it hard to practice compassion in real life. So you share a quote about compassion on Instagram and call it a day. Every day, for example, thousands of squirrels are massacred in our local forests and parks, while governments and corporations do nothing. Those who remain silent are complicit in this squirrely genocide. Save the squirrels. Now your friends, plus a certain number of total strangers, have a reminder that you value compassion. You know because you've been getting likes all morning. You're up to 6 likes in total. And best of all, you haven't had to do anything. You've received the dopamine hit, you've proven to everyone that you're a good person, and you haven't even had to save a single squirrel. Again, I'm sure the feeling is genuine, but really, do you know any squirrels? Or is this just the cause du jour, or as we're now calling it, the current thing? Also, please note that when I say I'm sure the feelings are genuine, what I mean is that feelings are necessarily subjective, and yours could be total bullshit. You could genuinely feel it, but maybe the whole thing is based on false information. Maybe you're listening to people who have an agenda and are working under different incentives than you are. Maybe you just feel that way about a long list of things, and it has nothing to do with the squirrels. Maybe, in other words, you were going to get worked up into a tizzy of compassionate self-congratulation anyway, and squirrels just happened to pop up in your feed. You see where I'm going with this. You believe in saving the squirrels, but the big question for me is, what is a belief? It's hard to talk about identity performance without talking about beliefs, but I have a couple of problems with beliefs. 1, beliefs are not actions. In fact, many people believe things that they're otherwise unwilling to take action on. A lot of beliefs don't even have an obvious action step. So what does it mean to believe them? Also, if it's not an action, then what is a belief? It's obviously not a fact. If it were a fact, it would just be true, and you wouldn't have to believe it. Tomorrow is Wednesday, and sunrise in Barcelona is at 6:45. Is that a belief? I definitely believe it, but I would also say that it's not, technically speaking, a belief. Would it be a belief if I phrased it, I believe that the sun will come up at around 6:45 tomorrow morning? Well, no, I don't really think so. It would still just be a fact. It's something that's going to happen whether or not I believe it. How about something more opinion-y? I believe that the rich should pay more taxes. That's a different proposition. Also, if we're going to take that statement seriously, we first need to define almost every part of it. Who are the rich, and how much more should they pay? And what exactly does should mean? Again, it's not actionable. Should is a desire and not a fact, and there's nothing easier than sitting around talking about what other people should do. But a lot of people just live their lives in giant puddles of should. They should all over themselves repeatedly, and in the end, nothing changes, because should is largely meaningless. Still, people act as if their beliefs were facts and become offended when anyone questions them. Perhaps it would be better if we admitted that there are true beliefs and false beliefs. True beliefs help us get things done. I believe that I need to drink water every day. Therefore, I make time for water and I don't die. This belief works for me, mostly because it's true. On the other hand, my biology will remind me if I don't drink water. I don't know anybody who's forgotten to drink water and died of it, or who just doesn't believe in drinking water. Everybody at some point gets thirsty enough that they believe in drinking water. So the belief that the body needs water is a fact. It's helpful because it's true. But false beliefs do something just as important. They allow us to signal group membership. Anyone can believe something that's merely true. But believing something that's false, or at least very implausible in public, that lets people know you're on their team. Any actual examples of this I give are guaranteed to deeply offend someone, and some people are just perpetually offended anyway. So let's talk about a group that's well known for their sense of humor: vegans. One of the articles of faith for vegans is that humans are naturally herbivores. They call this science. Our teeth aren't big enough to take down prey like wolves do, and our intestines are longer than those of carnivores. Therefore, we're biologically herbivores. The organization PETA has a whole article about this on their website. Of course, it's bullshit. But if you go around your college campus telling people that humans are herbivores, you signal to certain people that you're on the right team. Here's another example. I don't know if anyone still cares about this one, but there was a brief period earlier this year, in January 2025 to be exact, in which people were practically leaping onto their social media accounts to answer a question nobody had asked. Is Elon Musk a Nazi? This seemed a bit odd. It's quite far-fetched that a major public figure would decide to give a Nazi salute during a press conference, knowing that Nazis are rather unpopular these days. But also, people making the claim had nothing to do with Doge, nothing to do with Tesla, nothing to do with the US government, and nothing to do with Elon Musk. But they apparently assumed that it was important to jump on the bandwagon of denouncing old Elon as a Nazi without delay. And a lot of people made clear in their statements that not only was Elon a Nazi, but that anyone defending him was also a Nazi, or at the very least, complicit with them. My usual response to these things is to wish that people would read a history book. But it is an interesting group dynamic. Nazism itself is a collection of beliefs, a pseudo-religion really, and ways of signaling those beliefs to others. Modern wokeism, conservatism, Marxism, most isms, in fact, can be thought of as elaborate pseudo-religions made up of certain beliefs and in-group signals. If you know, you know. And most people just take a side and assume that their team's beliefs are based on reality, while everyone else is just dumb. So it goes. Tribal primates, but with instant global communication. In the recent story about the events in Torre Pacheco, just to review, 3 young Moroccans beat up an old man, some far-right hooligans turned out to hunt immigrants, etc. That was the previous episode, episode 116 of the podcast. The part about that story that sticks out most to me is that the young men who started the whole thing were allegedly doing it for TikTok content. If performing for the algorithm has gotten so bad that it's actually starting race riots, I'm a bit worried about what the next few years are going to bring here in Spain and in the West in general. Maybe instead of blaming immigrants, we deported all the TikTokers. Society as a whole could benefit. But that's probably more controversial than whatever Vox has in mind. Michael Easter, author of a book called The Comfort Crisis, which I mention all the time and which you should definitely read, points out that social media is, in theory, a space for discussion. But attaching numbers of likes and reshares to content creates incentives that are wildly different than a simple search for the truth. In other words, if the goal is going viral with your content, the truth probably won't get you there, because the truth is often rather boring. On the other hand, outlandish and extreme opinions, rage bait as the kids are calling it, has a better chance of making you famous online. And we're living in a cultural moment where money, fame, and attention are the only values that aren't publicly mocked. This could get weirder, and it probably will. The most recent corruption scandal here in the Spanish government, we go through at least 3 every week these days, involved 33-year-old Noelia Núñez, who resigned her position as Member of Parliament and Vice Secretary of the Partido Popular after it was discovered that she made up a few college degrees to put on her official CV. Nothing shocking or new about that. Other MPs have quietly been changing their resumes in the days since, removing dubious qualifications. What strikes me about her story, though, is that she came up as a TikToker as well. With about 180,000 followers there and a similar number on Instagram, she's good-looking, charismatic, and comfortable making 30-second sound bites. According to El País, this is what launched her career. Looks like a new generation of politicians is on its way up. Núñez got a job on a TV gossip show within hours of leaving politics, so I'm sure she'll be fine despite this temporary setback. Meanwhile, over in the US, we've got Zoran Mamdani, the Nepo Baby TikTok influencer, champagne socialist, and probable future mayor of New York City. The current political climate is probably pushing a lot of smart, reasonable people out of politics. Who wants to have their every hand gesture scrutinized as a potential Nazi dog whistle? Who's ready for their family to get death threats, or to be shot at by some lunatic over their campaign promises? Most sane people would rather stay out of the whole thing. The only people, in fact, who do want that kind of scrutiny are those whose lives are already dedicated to maximal attention-seeking behavior, and you'll find them by the thousands on social media. Are we ready for a society ruled by TikTok influencers? I'm not. But I'm worried that we're going to get one anyway. The Nancy Pelosi's and Alberto Núñez Feijóos of the world aren't going to be around forever, and the next generation of politicians will probably be more influenced by Mr. Beast than by JFK. That's about all I've got for today. Thank you for listening to the Spain to Go podcast. There are lots of ways you can support this podcast. Like I said earlier, expatmadrid.com/donate is the donation page. You can donate whatever amount of money works for you. It all helps to support my lavish lifestyle of iced coffee, protein, and going to the gym. Occasional bottles of sparkling water as well. Anyway, thank you very much for that. expatmadrid.com/donate. You could go to YouTube, look for Learn Spanish with Daniel on YouTube. I'm making more Spanish videos now. I made one last week that was doing pretty well. It was about, if I recall, the phrase no me toques, which is don't touch me, but also the variations like no me toques los huevos, etc. Hilarious and profane colloquial Spanish. So head by Learn Spanish with Daniel. Just put that into YouTube and you'll find it. Also, all the episodes of the podcast are on there. If you would like to receive updates, just go to expatmadrid.com and enter your email into the pop-up there. I'll send you notifications when I have new episodes coming out. expatmadrid.com, something will pop up for your email address. You could book a walking tour with expatmadrid.com/walks. The company is Walks Tours, but that is an affiliate link to specifically support the podcast. I get a small commission if you sign up. expatmadrid.com/walks. Walks Tours has tours of incredible locations around Europe. I did their Prado Museum early morning tour down in Madrid about a year ago. It was great. They also do Sagrada Familia here in Barcelona. They do a Montserrat and sparkling wine cava tour here outside Barcelona. That sounds pretty good, except that I don't drink anymore. But if you're into cava and beautiful landscapes, that would probably be amazing. There's also food tours over at expatmadrid.com/devour. expatmadrid.com/devour, DEVOUR. Devour Tours was started by my friend Lauren several years ago. I interviewed Lauren here on the podcast a few weeks ago. She is episode 115, if you would like to hear from Lauren about running a food tour business in Spain. She's had quite an adventure, but you don't have to be interested in the marketing aspect to enjoy the food tour. I went on one of her food tours around Plaza Mayor in Madrid several years ago. That was great. She also does market tours. Her company does market tours. You can get a window into Spanish culture and the culture of other countries. They have several in Italy. I don't know, wherever you are in Europe, check it out. expatmadrid.com/devour. Food is a great way to learn more about cultures, of course. Another friend of the podcast, biketourinSpain.com. You may have heard my episodes about the different bike tours. If you haven't already, check out episode 94 about my Extremadura bike tour. Literally one of the best Spain-based experiences I have had in my life. And we're talking more than 20 years in Spain at this point. Raul over at biketourinSpain.com is organizing these self-guided bike tours. You download the route to your phone for navigation, but he provides a very nice bike. He has accommodation arranged for you. It's all very well done. Highly, highly recommended. biketourinspain.com. There's a lot of similar websites out there, so make sure you go directly to biketourinspain.com. Tell Raul that Daniel from the Spain to Go podcast sent you. He will be very appreciative. And that's about all. You can follow me on Instagram, Daniel Welsh, WELSCH. Send me a message if there's anything you would like to hear on the podcast. I might be able to work something out. Y nada, hope you have a great day wherever you are in the world, and hasta la próxima. Bye.